In a small village tucked deep within a dense forest, two men named Georgia and Okpara were known as the finest hunters around. They weren't just companions in the hunt, they were inseparable friends who shared almost every part of their lives. They ate together, laughed together, and even married their wives on the very same day. In the entire village, nothing came between them except one mutual agreement: the only things they would not share were their wives. Their loyalty to one another was as firm as iron. They forged a covenant of eternal brotherhood, binding themselves in friendship and secrecy. But beneath this friendship lay a darker side. Georgia and Okpara had a notorious reputation for coveting and taking things that didn't belong to them, particularly the wild game that villagers caught in traps. Time and again, they would roam through the forest, checking the traps set by others and plundering whatever they could find. This sneaky habit caused unrest in the village, with many villagers complaining to the king about the theft of their hard-earned game. Despite the rising complaints, Georgia and Okpara were always careful to avoid being seen or caught. They prided themselves on their cunning, believing that no one would dare challenge their skill or audacity. But fate had different plans. One day, while stealing a large animal from one of the traps, they unknowingly picked a trap set by the king himself. As they dragged the animal away, the king, who had been patrolling the forest, spotted them from afar. Realizing that they were caught, panic and desperation took hold of the two friends. Their loyalty to each other was twisted by fear. In a flash, they turned their bows on the king, firing their arrows and killing him in cold blood. The forest grew silent as they realized the weight of their crime. They had slain the ruler, the man who governed their village and upheld its laws. Knowing that word of the murder would spread if anyone found out, they decided to make a pact so binding that neither would ever speak of the crime. In a gruesome act of loyalty and secrecy, each man cut out the other's tongue. This way, they believed, no one would ever know what they had done, and their unbreakable friendship would remain intact even through the silence that now lay between them. For years afterward, the villagers whispered of the king's mysterious disappearance and the unsettling silence of the two hunters. Though they remained inseparable, the bond that had once been their pride was now a burden, bound by fear, secrecy, and a tragic, silent loyalty. Over time, misfortune began to shadow Georgia and Okpara. Their once celebrated hunting prowess faded as their silence drew suspicion among the villagers. Unable to explain their strange muteness, they became increasingly isolated, shunned by friends and even family members who grew wary of their unsettling quiet and nervous behavior. One fateful night, as they ventured out on another hunt, a fierce storm swept through the forest. Struck by lightning as they sheltered beneath a large tree, both men were injured and barely managed to make it back to the village. However, their injuries left them weakened, and without the ability to speak, they couldn't call for help or explain their plight. Day by day, their physical and mental health deteriorated, haunted by the crime they'd committed and the weight of their secret. In their final days, the guilt of their crime wore them down, manifesting as relentless nightmares. They were plagued by visions of the king's face and the judgmental stares of the villagers. Despite the unbreakable loyalty they'd once shared, the bond had soured, and each felt resentment toward the other for having led them down this path. In the end, Georgia and Okpara passed away in isolation, their story of betrayal and tragic loyalty whispered in the village for generations. The king's mysterious death remained unsolved, and the villagers saw the hunter's fate as divine justice, a punishment for their greed, disloyalty to the village, and betrayal of the bond that had once defined them.